We have to continue to move the needle in our business so that God can bring the increase, because it says in Proverbs that the horses are prepared for battle, but God brings the victory. How did I go from 0 units to 14 units in my very first year investing in multifamily real estate, to then getting kicked in the teeth, only buying 2 units the following 3 years, and then the last 2 years exploding, purchasing 79 units? This video is not about strategy. This is a story about what changed and how God shifted everything. But first, we have to go to the text. Today we'll be reading from Joshua chapter 1, verse 8, where it says, "This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success." When I first came to know the Lord, I would always say things like, my life didn't get better when I started following the Lord, because it actually got more challenging. Challenging in the sense that I had to turn away from my sin. I had to turn away from wicked ways, and I had to follow Christ, which is challenging. God calls us, Jesus calls us to pick up our cross and follow him. When we pick up a cross, we're literally choosing to walk to our death, to die with Christ so that we can live with Christ. When I would read this verse just recently in my studies, it brought to my mind that that's not really true, that my life didn't get any better. Because if I wrote a list, and I did, I wrote out all the ways that my life improved when I started walking with the Lord, and I had a page full of notes. Of course, I met my wife and we became millionaires through real estate. We have a beautiful life and beautiful people around us. And I've got correction in my life. Correction meaning the way of righteousness lives in my heart, and I'm no longer dead to my sin. Correction is probably one of the best things that I've gotten from walking with the Lord. But this verse just continued to solidify that God made my business successful, because as it says, as we meditate on the book, the law, as we keep that in our hearts, you will make your way prosperous and you will have good success. And success defined by God. Success defined by the calling that he has over your life. Success defined by the purpose that he has in all of us to be representatives of Jesus, to go out and win souls in the marketplace, in our business, in our families, in our communities. So let's dive into the story of how God made my real estate business successful. Not by just implementing strategy, but by partnering with him. Because as it says, you will make your way prosperous and you will have good success. That doesn't just apply to me. That is a universal truth. So by diving in to his word, he will write our path. The awkwardness. I didn't always think this way. There was a season where I was completely lost. But leading up to that season, like I mentioned, my first year in real estate went from 0 units to 14 units. We had great success in what we were putting our hands to. In that next 3 years was the season of awkwardness, because I was living on my own in a place called Warren, Ohio, and I was bound and determined to continue to grow and scale my real estate business with gusto. But I hit roadblock after roadblock. My entire identity was wrapped up in everything real estate. I just made a video about the value of masterminds. I'm going to post that here on the screen, and it was valuable, but I was going there for the wrong reasons. I did want to increase my knowledge of real estate, but because I wasn't secure in who I was, everything everyone else was doing became the new thing that I would then attach myself to, whether it's short-term rentals or mobile home parks or RV parks or whatever the strategy was. And I jumped around from thing to thing, but still trying to maintain, I buy multifamily properties. And I had a little bit of cash saved up, but I kept hitting those roadblocks. There was a time where I invested thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars trying to buy apartment buildings that didn't pan out. And when they didn't pan out, I was destroyed internally, thinking, I'm not good enough. I'll never make it. Success is reserved for everybody else except for me. I mean, we had VAs calling and doing marketing. I had spent thousands of dollars in earnest money. I even sold my truck so I would have enough money to go put down an earnest money deposit for a deal that didn't work out. And it just brought me to a very low place. I was not successful unless I was buying deals. I was not successful unless I was making millions of dollars. I was not successful if I wasn't keeping up with the Joneses, in the sense of I want my life to be a reflection of these people instead of I want my life to be a reflection of Christ. I was trying to please man instead of trying to please God, where I needed to flip that on its head and I needed to please God and serve people. Instead of allowing the world to define my success, I needed to allow God to define my success. Because as it says in Joshua 1:8, that when we meditate on his law day and night, then we will be successful. Then we will be prosperous in everything that we do. This brings me into my awareness phase, where I didn't realize that I was pleasing man instead of pleasing God, and that I had my priorities shifted. So I took that place of emptiness and despair and I said, something has got to shift. So I went out into the woods. I turned my phone off and I just went out into nature for about 3 or 4 hours. And I just walked and I prayed and I shared time with the Lord. And in that time, God revealed to me that I was trying to plant my flag in the ground of real estate for my benefit, so that I could please myself, so that I could be something, that I could be successful. And I took that and I internalized it. But being a thick-skulled person, you might be able to relate with that. I didn't take any action. I went back and I kept doing the same things over and over until about a year later, I got to a place where I was sitting right here in this room at this desk. And I just thought, why is nothing panning out? 0 to 14 units in my first year, 2 units in the next 3 years. What is going on? I'm plugged into the right groups. I'm talking to the right people. My friends are all successful in their craft. What am I doing wrong? And literally at this desk behind the camera, God came to me again, knocking on my spirit. And he said, have your entire identity wrapped up in real estate. Your identity comes from what you're producing versus your identity coming from who I tell you that I am. And this was the light bulb moment. This was the awareness that I really needed to experience. And this moved me from awareness to awakening. Because then literally that same week, once I had actually submitted, I truly submitted my life, my business, and my ministry to the Lord. I said, this is yours. If your hand's not on it, I don't want it. My heart posture completely shifted. So now going back to Joshua chapter 1, verse 8, by meditating on his law day and night, going to him when we face trials and tribulations, allowing him to speak into our lives, we will then have great success and we will then be prosperous, right? So that same week, 2 6-unit properties fell right into my lap. And I had been trying to get in the commercial multifamily game for so long. This is a years-long culmination. They fell into my lap from 2 different sources. We closed on them in the same day. This was mind-blowing to me. I couldn't believe it, but yet I knew that this had come from the Lord. There was no other way around it. While still in my awakening phase, after we closed on those 2 6-unit buildings, I recognized that I needed to be a good steward of what the Lord had brought into our life. I recognized that I needed to raise the capital, to do the work, to mind the accounting, to make sure that we are putting the right people in the right places and the right dollars in the right places. Because as real estate investors know, that the work obviously begins after you close, because we need to make sure that the investment is going to produce the returns that we talked about before we closed on them. And that's exactly what we did. We continued to be faithful in our walk with the Lord while renovating these properties. And they worked out beautifully. We learned some lessons along the way, because God doesn't come down from the heavens and say, son, you have to do this, 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 and this. No, I need to be an expert at my craft. I need to be someone who is dedicated and diligent in doing the things that are right. And that's the beauty of the relationship of partnering with God, meditating on his law, knowing right from wrong, and building a business built on good. And that's what the book of Proverbs talks about. It says, work the land that is right in front of you instead of jumping from thing to thing, that shiny object syndrome, which most investors struggle with right now. No, we want to go an inch wide and a mile deep instead of a mile wide and an inch deep. Focus on the thing that is in front of you, because the Bible also says, he that is faithful over little will then be made faithful over much. So then we finished out those two projects. We refinanced, we paid out our investors, and we were looking for the next target. But the feel of this was completely different. I was no longer chasing status. I was no longer chasing success in the sense that I have to buy this so that I can be something. I have to do this so that I can become like everybody else. No, I wanted to do this because God had shifted my mindset. I wanted to build my business, AKA my ministry, for God, instead of building it for myself. So after we closed out on that refinance, literally just a couple months later, a friend of mine who's a commercial real estate broker brought me a 28-unit multifamily portfolio that we closed on. We raised the capital, we did all the things, we did the work, we closed on those. But here's the kicker. Throughout that process, another realtor friend of mine knew exactly where one of my buildings was and saw that another multifamily property came up on the market, and we closed on that and 3 others from the same seller, a 17-unit portfolio a month later. Talk about mind-blowing hockey stick type of increase, because we were faithful over the little and God made us faithful over much, because I wanted to make sure that my business, we are people first. We lead, we are a ministry first and a business second. God owns my business. I'm the manager. I am the steward. And as Christians, we must have this mentality, because it's the mentality that those who believe meditate on the law day and night. They don't allow it to depart from their mouths, because then we will have great success and then we will be prosperous in what we do. I work for Jesus, and now in our real estate business, we are multi-millionaires through the equity that we own. We have $5 million worth of real estate. And here's the real heart posture, is if it burned down today, if we lost everything, every dollar, every building, granted, ideally the people in them would all survive in this scenario. If we lost all of our buildings, if something happened, we filed for bankruptcy, we would be okay. Because here's what comes with that prosperousness. Here's what comes with that success from meditating on the word day and night. Joy, peace, steadfastness, patience, and all the fruits of the Spirit, all the goodness of God. When we allow him to live and write his word on our heart, there is no way that we could ever be brought down by anything, because God is goodness. God is greatness. And one of my favorite verses of all time is Psalms 37:28. I might have those mixed up, but it's in there, that the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in their way. What does that mean? The steps of the righteous are ordered. First, I have to become righteous. One, I have to recognize that Jesus Christ died for my sins and rose again on the third day, defeating death in the grave so that I could live in eternity with him and that I could bring as many people with me as possible. The second part of that righteousness is because of Christ's sacrifice, we also, having him live in our heart, we walk in his way. We walk in righteousness. We do the things that he has commanded us to do by keeping the law written on our heart. So therefore, if we are walking in righteousness, that means we are taking steps. God cannot bless steps untaken, which is why as business operators, we have to continue to push the ball forward. We have to continue to move the needle in our business so that God can bring the increase, because it says in Proverbs that the horses are prepared for battle, but God brings the victory. We do the things that are necessary. That way, when God brings the increase, we're prepared to steward what he brought into our universe. And through all of the challenges, my strength being in Christ, he has prepared me to handle even more. The things that we're facing in our business now will be like child's play come down the road when we are facing even bigger challenges and bigger trials as we continue to operate our business with God. So taking everything that we just talked about, my business and my success, your business and your success, not defined by the world, not defined by man, no expectations, no deadlines. We can implement those things as disciplines to be diligent in the things that God has given us to steward. But ultimately, we prepare the horses and God brings the increase. It's a mindset and a heart set shift away from how the world operates to how God's kingdom of heaven operates. And I'll close with this because I always like to take an Old Testament verse and apply it to a New Testament truth as well. So we're going to go to Hebrews 11:6, where it says, "And without faith, it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him." In business, it takes faith. There have been times where we didn't have the money to pay mortgages, but we trusted in the Lord. We continued to tithe. We continued to trust. And the increase came in the moment that we needed. That has happened on multiple occasions where I've been sitting there simply blown away by the graciousness and the mercy of God and how much better my business feels, operates, and impacts when we do it with him instead of doing it on our own. No more striving. No more aiming to please man. Remember, our goal as Christians, ministers in the marketplace, is to please God and serve people. May God bless you and Godspeed.